And his name, Ian Furness, joins us, Sick on 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Ian, I saw the picture you pinned at the top of your feed. How did everything go with you on Friday?
It was great. Thanks for asking, guys. Yeah, we do a charity. I do a charity golf tournament every year. We didn't do it a couple of years ago with the pandemic and had some changes last year, but back to original spot, and it benefits a lot of cool things, including Helinski's Hope, which helps student athletes with their mental health. But I got a question for you guys. You're not related to Justin Smoak, are you? Because if that's the case, I'm going to feel like you're sitting there pouting the whole time. So I'm driving by T-Mobile Park right now where that dude sat there. Every time he hit a fly ball on the warning track, he'd sit there and throw a temper tantrum. So I hope you guys aren't related.
We are in a lot of different long lineage ways. Yes, he's from South Carolina. That's where he played. But no, not regular blood. But he does have one great last name.
He does. I'll give you that. It's the last name of a guy that should be able to hit the ball over the fence, not just to the fence. But yes, absolutely. So,
wow.
Look,
I love this guy already just because he's brutally honest about it.
Yeah, 14-game winning streak though. And still, all that.
Ian, is it true you're pissed off about this USC UCLA story?
Well, those two. Well, UCLA is a joke. I mean, let's be honest. They're just riding the coattails of USC, so good for them, right? They get to go to the Big Ten and, make some more money. I'm sure their cross-country team's going to love running at Rutgers after flying across the country. But, the way USC handled it, guys, was just greasy. Now, I don't know. I mean, you're in Texas. I don't know how the Texas-Oklahoma stuff went down with the SEC, if there was a little bit of greasy factor there too. But, the way it went down with this conference, the Pac-12, Pac-12's always kind of held itself to this higher calling, I guess, so to speak, right? I mean, it's every school is a research institution to the highest level. Even the land-grant schools are involved, and, they're kind of snooty. They look down. Well, we can't have BYU in our conference because they're not a research institution. Oh, Boise State doesn't meet the academic requirements. I mean, shut up. And so they do that all those years. And USC was always at the top of the list, thinking that they're basically Stanford of Southern California, right? And then all of a sudden they kind of wink, and boom, they blow out of town in the middle of the night because they're mad about revenue sharing in the conference. So it just wasn't done right. But that's the way college sports are right now. Real quick, I went to Washington State. I think what college football should be about is not about four teams from two every year from the SEC playing in a mythical championship, 2-game playoff. I think college football is about getting upsets. It's about tailgating. It's about geographical rivalries and traditional rivalries. That's what I think college football is about, and frankly, college sports. And it's unfortunate that it's all going away.
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ian,
agree.
was it greasy? We were at media days, and everybody was hugging and singing "Kumbaya." And then one day we get in the studio, ready to go on the air, and then all of a sudden Texas and Oklahoma are leaving under a cloak of darkness almost, and only because A&M was so mad about it that they had to tell the world. Did all of us even know when we found out? So yeah, it all is that's kind of the difference I think between this round of realignment and the last couple is that building up to the last couple, there were at least years of people complaining about things where you thought it might happen, as opposed to now where it's just like, what the hell? You're gone now? Okay, I guess that's how it's going to go. Would have liked to know, so that makes it even worse.
I never thought that the LA schools would leave, because here's the thing, in this conference, especially USC, first of all, USC, if you guys would have done your part the last few years and been USC as opposed to being basically Arizona or Cal, you would have been, the conference would be in better shape than it was. But Clay Helton was your coach. You were awful. You went through like 15 athletic directors and everything else as Pete Carroll's been there. So, that's part of the blame there. But yeah, I think it's just odd. It'd be interesting. Just keep an eye on it this week. The Pac-12 Media Day is Friday in Los Angeles in Southern California. I believe there's there, unless it's Vegas. Anyway, it's this Friday. Be interesting to see what the commissioner, George Kliavkoff, says, how he handles it. I think they've got to go on the offense. San Diego State has to be added to the conference because of school. There's a lot of talk about SMU being added to the conference, so we'll see what happens.
Ian, as a Washington State guy, as you mentioned, I mean, when you saw that news, I mean, there's certain fan bases like Oregon and Washington who say, all right, let's pivot to the Big Ten. Let's, commandeer and get unequal revenue sharing in the pack, and they've got options. But Wazoo is one of those that you feel like, they're in trouble. Was that kind of your immediate sense, and what has been kind of the thoughts about what's going on amongst the Cougar fan base?
I lost you there for a second. You guys back with me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All
yeah,
right, go ahead, Craig, re-ask it.
All right, Ian, you're a Wazoo guy, as you mentioned. When the announcement came out, there were some fan bases, like in Oregon, for example, they could say, all right, well, we'll just pivot to the Big Ten, or we'll be commandeering the new Pac-12 and get unequal revenue sharing. And there's schools that are going to be fine when it's all said and done. Wazoo is much more of a wild card. What's kind of the feeling there right now, and how much does the Pac-12 need to stick together for Wazoo fans to feel like they're going to have a place at the table when all the dust settles?
Well, Wazoo and Oregon State are the two schools that kind of everyone talks about being in trouble, right? Like, it's what's going to happen with them. Are they going to end up in the Mountain West or FCS level, which they're not going to end up in FCS level, but are they going to end up in the Mountain West? And I'll just give you a little background. I'm from up here, but I've moved just for a different job in hockey, but I was down in Salt Lake City working there when the Mountain West Conference was formed, when the old WAC broke up, and they had the breakaway 8. So I've seen this before. It's always interesting to see all the strange bedfellows that kind of come about realignment. First of all, Oklahoma, Texas. Now we're in bed together, really, like you two. Yeah. USC and UCLA. Oregon and Washington reportedly joined at the hip, although I tend to disagree. I think in this conference, the hard part is, the football brands, and let's just take a step back. The television numbers are what we look at, right? That's kind of what the be-all, the end-all is sometimes now, depending on who you talk to. Well, like Washington State has the Seattle market. Most of the alums at Washington State, the Cougs, live in Seattle. That's the media market number 12. It's basically split Washington and Washington State. The schools I think that are really in trouble, football brand-wise, are Cal and Arizona. Arizona's got the great basketball brand now, so maybe that kind of outweighs it. Cal is in trouble. Cal and Stanford have like 28 total sports, all those non-revenue sports. Football carries the weight. Wazoo and Oregon State are at the minimum number of D1 sports, like 17, I believe it is, for each school. So they're not carrying as much dead weight around their athletic department. So I still think, though, I think the Pac-12 needs to add 2 teams. There's a lot of talk about this real alliance, some sort of revenue alliance with ESPN kind of at the forefront with the ACC. Maybe you have a championship game at the end of the year between the 2 conferences. That's where the money is made anyway. I think that's the most likely scenario. I don't see a Big 12 merger. The Big 12 markets, television-wise, just don't cut it now that Oklahoma and Texas are left. So that's kind of what I think might end up happening, and seems to be a general consensus. The people I talk to involved in the athletic departments in this area kind of feel the same way. It's the Pac-12, despite losing the LA schools, may still be working from a position of strength just because of the television market size and that coveted West Coast time slot, guys. People still want college football on a Saturday night, the 6, 7, 7:30, even 8 o'clock Pacific time starts. Those are still a value to television networks.
Ian, there is a chance the Pac-12 could have done something different to avoid this. Who knows? Just like the Big 12 could have done something a few years ago to avoid where they were last year and a couple of different times. Do you feel like the Pac-12 made a mistake when they did not invite Brigham Young to join them?
Yeah, but I'm really in the minority of that. And it's funny because when I worked in Salt Lake, I mean, I'm a Catholic, I'm a beer drinking idiot Catholic kid from Seattle that's, about the furthest thing from a BYU fan. In fact, I think to this day, if you go on a BYU message board, my life might be being threatened on a weekly basis. They hated me down there, but I don't know why, but I think they did. I think they really did. I think they dropped the ball. I think screw Colorado, man. I never understood Colorado. I know it's in the Denver market, but Colorado to me has always been a Big 12 school. Should have been a Big 12 school. And when they invited Colorado and not BYU, and they used the whole research institution and all that kind of stuff in there, you're inviting them to an athletic conference. You're not inviting them to take an SAT test for you. I don't get that. I never quite understood that. And to have to split up Utah and BYU, I know it's the same television market, but it's not as well. BYU is a true national brand, and I think that's important. And I think even more so a national brand than, say, Notre Dame. Every Mormon loves BYU. It doesn't matter where you live. And, like I said, you can go anywhere you go. I traveled with that BYU team and covered them for a few years. Everywhere you went, there was thousands and thousands of people from the Latter-day Saints church in the stands. They're a national brand, and they bring national TV, national numbers. I think the Pac-12 did drop the ball. Now, again, I'm in the minority. Not everybody agrees with that, but I think if they would have kept at BYU instead of Colorado, I think that would have helped this.
Yeah, there's kind of a sense in this part of the country that the Cals and Stanfords don't want to work with religious schools or faith-based schools. How true is that as far as what they would be willing to do, especially adding schools on down the line if the Pac-12 went to that?
Well, here's the difference. So it depends on the school. First of all, this damn conference has had to work around Stanford's alliance with Notre Dame for years, because Notre Dame and USC play Notre Dame plays Stanford and USC every single year in college football. And so because of that, you have rivalry games that have to be rescheduled throughout the conference to make things work, because Stanford and USC insist on having to play Notre Dame every year, and they can't ever play them at the start of the year back to back. They always play them throughout the year. So Notre Dame does work with a faith-based school, or Stanford does work with a faith-based school. I think in the case of, depends on the school, and I'm not as familiar with, say, a Baptist or a Methodist school, what have you, but BYU, one of the challenges with BYU is there's no Sunday play. We see that when they're in the NCAA tournament. They can't play on Sunday. So, they, like, for example, you're in the tournament, they'll be in the Thursday, Saturday bracket always, right? And they'll never play on a Sunday. It's problematic if the women ever get to the women's Final Four when they were on Sundays, types of things. But that was something I think the Pac-12 was not, or the Pac-10 at the time was not really excited about doing, is, rescheduling stuff. Women's soccer, men's soccer, baseball, so many sports are played on Sunday in our conference, at least. So I think that was the bigger issue, which is Sunday play as opposed to maybe a faith-based school.
Ian, you mentioned on the Washington, Oregon side of things not being so sure about kind of, I guess, that partnership, if you will. What did you mean by that?
Well, first of all, I think part of it is this. And again, I mean, all of us, whether it's me or John Wilner or whoever is out there, at Spock, none of us know, because if any of us knew really what was going on, we would have saw USC and UCLA leaving, right? Let's preface it with that. But the Oregon-Washington partnership, I don't know what it's like. Well, I mean, you guys are in football crazy world, but they don't like each other. The institutions don't like each other. This is not, Washington and Washington State work together on a variety of things in research. Oregon State the same in state. There's legislative. There's budgets with the legislature, things like that. That's not the case with Oregon and Washington. I mean, it's a very acrimonious, contentious at times relationship. I look at the Big Ten as this. Oregon has, we'll go back to the brand, right? Because that's probably what it comes down to more than anything. We're looking at realignment and super conferences. You guys would probably agree. I mean, I would ask you, I'd throw it back at you. If I say, Pac-12 without USC, and I say Pac-12 football, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It's probably Oregon, right? Yep. I mean, whether it's goofy uniforms or not, it's the Ducks. They have built up a national brand. Washington thinks it's still 1991. Don James is the coach, and they're winning a national championship, sharing it, by the way, with Miami. That's Washington fans still literally think it's 91. Probably like Cowboy fans still think they're something special, right? That's how it works. And they live in the past. And I just think that with Washington, there's Washington fans up here. They're still like, what the hell? How do we not get invited to the Big Ten? Well, because probably USC doesn't want you in the Big Ten. And if I'm USC, I sure as hell don't want Oregon in the Big Ten, because if right now USC and UCLA have the market cornered as far as big time college football and the biggest recruiting base, which is the LA area, Southern California as a whole. Why would I want to compete with Oregon, in the same conference if I don't have to? So that's kind of how I look at it. I really think that's the case. I think that, I think Oregon and Washington, if they're being honest with themselves, they're probably better suited with some sort of enhanced Pac-12, some sort of ESPN broker deal with the ACC, and moving on. Now, when the college football playoff gets restructured in, 4 years from now, then maybe all bets are off again. But for the next 3 or 4 years, I think that's probably your best bet.
One more thing, Ian, if you don't mind, on Oregon and Washington. If those
Yeah.
two, if
Yeah.
they do look at the Big 12, if there is any interest between the two, who do you think would have the most interest? Washington or and again, things have got to be set up and everyone has to see what the new money's going to look like and all. But if of those two, if both of them were talking to the Big 12, which of them do you feel is more likely to want to join the Big 12 if that scenario ever gets to that point?
I would think Oregon, but I think they would both. I would say, I think it would be equal because neither one of those two schools wants to be perceived as lesser than the other. And so I think, like, if you're Washington, you would hate to see Oregon go to the Big 12. You're left behind in a watered-down Pac-10. Even though you might think you're the kingpin out here, that would be a shot to the ego. I think their bigger fear at Washington would be Oregon and Notre Dame going to the Big Ten and Washington left behind. The other part of it, too, guys, I don't know how much you've talked about it with, Texas is a lot closer and Oklahoma a lot closer than we're talking with the, LA schools going to the Big Ten geography-wise. But I cannot for the life of me fathom how we're talking about, all the non-revenue sports that sometimes run, have matches multiple times a week, flying across the country thousands of miles. To me, that makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, Oregon playing in the Big 10 or Big 12, traveling to where? I mean, Ames, Iowa, or wherever. You guys are Baylor, right?
Waco,
right?
Yep.
So I mean, it's like I don't. Yeah, like I just don't. How do you? We're sending our tennis team there? Like what? How does that make sense? So I don't care how much revenue you're getting. I travel for a living. I mean, in the fall I travel with the Seahawks every week. You fly commercial that many times, it's going to wear on you, man. It's just not good, not healthy. I know we want to throw out the term student athlete and say it doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. Last I checked, most of those kids, especially in the non-revenue sports, are still going to class. That's a hard thing to ask for them to do.
Preaching to the choir, man, on that point. Yeah.
Ian, thank you, man. Everything's off the table. You take nothing for granted anymore. Appreciate a lot of what you said. We'll see what happens, and maybe have you on once the dust settles. Appreciate your time. That's Ian Furness.
Anytime, fellas. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And also, thoughts and prayers just to Dave, to Softy as well. As his father is struggling a little bit right now. That's Ian Furness, KJR Radio, Fox 13 in Seattle.
Yeah, can you imagine being